Good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, coming on the air. I know we don't have any official warnings at this point, but we have some significant weather in the form of storms that are very close to severe limits. It seems one of those moving in here toward Bradford County. We may get a warning any minute here, quite honestly. We're having to use the Moody Air Force Base radar this afternoon because there is an issue with the Jackson radar going to be down until tomorrow here, unfortunately, as we're looking at things in that regard. But again, we have some strong thunderstorm activity that we're monitoring here, and we need to just make sure folks are inside and away from windows around Star. This is a very active and very, noisy type of complex of storms moving on in here. A lot of lightning with this, so we need to get inside and get away from windows around Stark right now. No, there's not a warning. There is an advisory for Brooker, but we could get a warning here at any point. It's going to be harder to see the wind energy here today because, unfortunately, the coastal radar set out of Jacksonville is down. There's an issue. There was some type of maintenance, but now I'm going to be down until tomorrow. My understanding is. So I'm going to have to use the radar a little bit further away because it's going to be harder to see how much the wind is actually getting down to the surface, and maybe a little bit harder to kind of see if something is, these storms are already, this time of year always on the edge. Well, are they strong or are they actually severe? And it's going to be a little bit harder to make that small, delineation here this afternoon. But I can tell you what, there's a lot of lightning, a lot of heavy rain, maybe even a little bit of small hail mix in. There is just tons of lightning. You don't need the radar, product from a certain site to tell you that. That comes from a different source. And there's just a lot of electrical energy. We really need to be inside right now. This is a situation where I know we can't really necessarily do it here in the Weather Center, but if I'm, somebody at home there, maybe watching on my computer on Stark, what I might do? I might just go ahead and say, well, you need to just go ahead and get off that computer and watch me on your phone instead, something like that. Maybe even unplug that computer because of all the electrical energy coming in here. This is a very nasty lightning producer here. We already had a little bit kind of waving around. Now, Keystone got hit here earlier on with some pretty nasty weather. Look, storm total rainfall, that vicinity, at least you can see there was some rain there, in that area. And the rain already starting to roar out. But let's go ahead and pull up the camera real quick. We're going to look here off toward the west as it's coming on in right now here on us around the Stark area. I know at points it can look dark when you actually have the rain falling. We're starting to get some of that precip falling here right now. But I know even in Jacksonville, also they're getting a lot of precip falling and some flooding concerns. There's a flood advisory towards some parts of Jacksonville there. But as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there, so we just have to be kind of mindful of that. I know in San Marco they have issues here as we're looking at things here in toward that area a lot. There's pretty flood prone over there, and they're having some problems in that vicinity right now. Some flood advisories in play as we're looking and as we're tracking. So again, I'm just trying to give you guys the very latest. We don't generally come on when there's not a warning, especially this time of year, but this looks like it could be one of the stronger storms we've had. If this holds together here, and I'm switching radar, to being back on the screen here. If this holds together, this could be one of the stronger storms here we have all summer long around Stark. Assuming it does hold together, you can't see the boundaries as good, and if there's going to be some weakening here, like because of the model guidance, that was telling us that it would really hold together, but we don't have the closer radar, so we can't tell for sure. But let's pull up our instability product on our other system, and we'll be able to see here that red, that purple, unstable scenario here meteorologically would tell me that it's probably going to hold together and be a problem here around Stark over the next few minutes. This isn't necessarily a tornado situation or a severe thunderstorm situation. Granted, I would not rule out some damaging winds out of this. The radar is so far away here that we're having to pull off of because the Jackson radar is down. I can't guarantee we're not going to have some damage here, other than lightning damage, which is very possible, and that's not part of the severe criteria. So, and could even have a little bit of flooding in some of those poor drainage areas. That's a distinct possibility here. No, again, the radar coverage, here in the rain, seeing what I see on the radar, the red here where we're at, it's not exactly matching up so far. I would almost think it would be a little bit heavier than what I just heard and more consistent. So maybe this isn't quite as bad, and maybe that's why we don't have a warning, but it's kind of hard to say since we're normally we can get the radar feed here out of this side up here, and that's closer, and get a better read on it. Actually, it's coming from the atmosphere down to the surface, but because it's down, we have to get it from up here, so it's going to be harder to figure out what's going on. But the lightning trackers, are telling us a story where there's just multiple lightning strikes here in the vicinity, so you really need to be inside right now. Whether this is severe or not, there's lightning around, and this could be very dangerous. Some lightning strikes could, cause some damage here, can cause injury, or even worse. So be very careful of the electrical energy around. It's a very dangerous lightning producer. As we're looking here from Brooker to Hampton right now, and it's going to be crossing over, some of the horses over 301 here in just the next little bit. Again, it's hard to say what the winds are in this. The advisories for 40. There's not a new advisory further east yet. My guess here, if I had to just kind of guess, I'd be 40 to 50 on the winds right now to put it just under severe limits, but I can't tell you for sure because the radar, we're not able to get a good look at that, unfortunately. But it's just summertime, so this is not a hurricane or something hidden. It's better to go down now than when that's happening, or if it's a, springtime spoil line or something, when that has a bigger tornado threat, when we have a pretty low tornado threat here today in general. Of course, if a boundary hits something, you never know. But, again, let's go ahead and jump sources here again. You can see that rain coming down now here. It's just dark somewhat. It's pretty heavy. 6/10 of an inch here, or 6/100, excuse me, of an inch here so far. No, wind's not getting too gusty yet, but again, just going to continue to give you guys the very latest on the situation. Let's look at some of the other storms in the area right now. You see quite a bit of lightning there around Lodi and Holland. You see here some electrical energy around Lake City there. You see there on Green Cove Springs. You see Putnam Hall to Interlochen, give or take, in Flagler County. Now, don't be at the water right now. If you're hearing that thunder roar, you want to go indoors here in this type of situation. So, very important to keep in mind. You see some stuff here in north southeast Georgia. Some lightning happening. So just be very careful about that. Now this wind here is kind of in this corridor here, it would seem. So the wind's about to move into Stark here in the next few minutes. It would seem, based on the Doppler indications, I don't see any twisting motion with this, which is good. So more just straight line wind could knock out some power. In addition, some of these lightning strikes could do the same here, knock out some power, whether it's direct strikes or maybe, a strike on a tree, and then that falls on a power line. So, again, just to be very mindful of that, and hope, in the limited outages that, would be expected here, not something overwhelming, that everybody's safe here when they're trying to restore that power. But again, just continuing to track all this lightning here this afternoon. Just whenever thunder roars, go indoors here, obviously. Can't mess around. I know this is nothing, absolutely nothing like what they saw in North Texas there. With, their flash flooding situation, but you still got to be watching out for localized spots, because once you get over 6 inches of water on a road, something like that, and that really can cause folks to lose their footing if they're out and about, if they get out of their vehicle, because only 6 inches of water can knock you down. So it's very important to keep in mind here this afternoon. So, I know in the state of Florida right now, we have 12,576 customers in the dark. Almost 7,000 in Duval County without power. That's a lot. Almost 2,000 in Alachua County. We haven't had any warnings yet, but again, that's indicative of these storms are pretty volatile. I wonder if we've had some wind damage in Duval. We just haven't maybe got the, notification that was a little bit more likely, because, having to look higher up with the wind mode, I'll back this up. You're going to see the development. Maybe it'd been able to, be a situation where we could have saw the finer details if it wasn't for that radar. You see there, that looked pretty nasty. I was a little surprised we didn't see a warning pop up there. Really didn't see that many advisories pop up as we're looking for advisories, or, wind type driven advisories. That's a lot of power outages, really, for Duval. Almost 7,000 customers in the dark, according to Power.us. But somebody check the JEA map, because that may give us a better, more up-to-date look at things here. Let me go ahead and keep looking here, keep tracking. Yeah, 6,970 customers in the dark there in Duval County. So that kind of tells you the story here. Kind of thinking each one's a little bit stronger than what, it may look like in some ways, but they still look pretty strong on these, views that we're getting out of the Moody's side. I know the modeled guidance from last night was really showing we have a lot of storms around. So just have to be really cognizant of what's going on. Again, you can see it on reflectivity, maybe not on velocity as much, the wind potential though, because this is looking higher up, so you're not sure exactly reaching or not. But let's get over to the other mode here, the camera mode. I know getting kind of bright. Sometimes it'll switch up on us a little. I think I saw a flash on there. Yeah, hear the thunder. Yeah, but you kind of get the idea. Some pretty nasty weather here as we're looking, as we're tracking things. Some wind energy here, folks. Could get, some lightning in that clustering as well. So I went up a little higher. That actually looks worse. Some of these modes here, I just gotta wonder, if we have some damaging winds even coming in this dark. Based on this Paradise report up to Duval County's way, this environment here seems prime for some isolated damaging gusts in my assessment here, based on 7,000 folks in the dark. Some of that can be, because of the lightning, there's been some flooding. I don't know if that would really cause it as much, but it might take a little longer to restore power in those instances. But, those are a couple together, those threats. But you see that wind here? This shows only 30 miles an hour, but that bright pixel into me, with the orientation, the environment, I would say 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts are a possibility here. Right around that Walmart area here in Stark in the next few moments, crossing the bypass there, as we're kind of looking at things, and then getting right into where that Walmart area there. So I know our roads, this is, the topography shows the bypass being built. Didn't have it on here as a road, but, you can see it on here is what my point is. And so, that, I think that's Walmart right there as I'm looking here. And then this wind enhancement's coming right on in here right now, these brighter pixels. That's where we could really have, some stronger conditions. Make sure you're inside. Do not be out in that parking lot right now at Walmart. That's some strong wind that's headed your way right now into toward that part of town. This is a pretty volatile storm. Again, we don't generally offer this type of coverage and not a warning, but, and that number in Jacksonville, 7,000 customers, give or take in the dark, backs me up here. I think these storms are a little bit stronger here, or at least having a little bit more of an impact here than you would otherwise think based on some, the velocity mode here. Not, able to see things quite as good with the Jackson radar down this afternoon. The environment seems primed and the model guidance telling that story, and haven't had any formal warnings, but just not, like an overwhelming situation by any stretch, but, on a localized level, these local micro scale details can mean a difference here, between more impactful than you would think, or maybe not as big of a deal. So, got a couple tenths of an inch on that rain gauge now here east of Stark. This area here hadn't had all that much rain here lately. This may be a pretty, big producer, kind of a gully washer here over the next little bit as we're looking, as we're tracking. We can zoom out. I think I heard our equipment flickering a little. We do have some backup systems, granted, depending on the nature of this. If we don't have a warning, I may not jump on because it's pretty degraded when we have to deal with that. Also have a warning if we lose power, I may not jump on that. But my point is here, we're just going to go ahead and continue to watch this situation, continue to track. And I know, a lot of times posting the alerts there this time of year, Facebook and then Twitter says X and not actually jumping on, and this situation doesn't even have a warning in play, but it's a situation where we feel like we need to be on the air with you guys at the moment. Yeah, you see that rain coming down. It's darker than it looks on that. It's so dark out there. It's kind of trying to make it look lighter than it actually is now, I think. But again, just continuing to give you the latest. All that lightning here. I'm going to get a different perspective on this. I know we have a marginal risk of severe in southeast Georgia. We had some acts in there earlier on. You know, some storminess, but you see some stuff there east of I-75, a couple inches there of rain. And then in Duval County, even more than that, maybe 3-4 inches in some areas there. Pretty noteworthy this afternoon for sure. That's definitely, I don't know if you heard that thunder, but that's proving my point. The reason we're on the air right now. Sounds like it struck something about, I don't know, maybe a mile or two away. I'm guessing based on what I heard there, but I might end up seeing that strike here on our mapping. But again, just continuing to give you guys the latest here on this. If thunder roars, go indoors. Take the situation seriously this afternoon. You know, if it's not severe, that doesn't mean we couldn't have a deadly lightning strike. You need to be inside. You need to be away from windows here. This is a very dangerous lighting situation right now. This is a very dangerous lighting scenario here as we're looking toward Bradford County, anywhere you're hearing that thunder rumble. But when it gets louder like that, you know, that one struck something. That was hopefully it was just, you know, a tree, and it didn't do any damage. We hope it didn't catch the tree on fire, wherever that was. If it was that, you know, or a home, and, you know, that could have caused a problem, or it could have hit a person, which is the worst case scenario. You never know. I don't know if you probably heard that in my microphone. I can't guarantee you did, but I suspect you heard that strike something there. It sounded like it was a mile or two away. I'm going to check some different sources to get an idea. Just another lightning map. I know this kind of shows it here, but I have another source that I can look at. I can kind of nail this down. There was a ground strike 1 minute ago, a couple miles east of the sheriff's office. That'd be closer to here. Let me see. There's a certain map I can pull up. I know this one will show it here, but I just want to see if I can get an idea of what areas general. Don't take this, you know, as being precise exactly, but actually, honestly, I didn't have this one up before it happened, so I don't know if I can get that back. I'll keep it up, though, so for future, because it's only going to track them when I put it up on that other source. So, let's say it was this one here. I don't know if it was. Yeah, that's not, you know, too far away from where I'm at here. As we're looking at things, it's getting out toward State Road 16. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest here on the situation. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. You just need to remember, whenever thunder roars, go indoors here in these type of conditions. And they're not in our area, but up to, you know, north by a good margin. There's just a bit of thunderstorm morning there around Screven County there. 60-mile-an-hour winds a possibility up that way, according to the Charleston office. But honestly, that didn't look much different. You know, let me back this up to see. We'll go forward and back it now as we load the frames in. And there's a little bit of enhancement there when it first started. That looked worse than what we have around here. But, of course, I can't go to the Jackson radar. That's our default. We have to go to the other one because of the issue. But it doesn't look that much different right around Stark. I don't know why there's not an advisory on this. You're not saying there needs to be a warning, but they dropped the advisory at 4:15. I don't think they've extended that. I haven't seen it pop up anyway. But that's at least advisory type criteria here, no doubt. You know, with that type of wind coming on in here towards Stark. We're just, you know, continue to track it. Eventually, maybe the plan is to get rid of advisories, so maybe they're not focused on that as much as just seeing if this, you know, gets to warning criteria here. But still, this is advisory type weather at least. You know, gusts to 40, definitely a possibility with this, if not even maybe closer to 50. So, again, just continuing to track the situation very carefully here. Just continuing to track things, you know, as best as we can. It's going to be hot. We don't have the storms around as we look ahead. Right now we're down to 72, though. East of Stark has really cooled down. That's a big drop. But, again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest here. But on our velocity, this says winds are 25 to 30. But, again, we're having to look higher up here. I mean, when you go higher up even, it shows it less and less. That makes me wonder, you know, let me check that Bradford weather's dim. I know I'm not seeing a huge number on mine. Let me see what number they might have at the sheriff's office there on that WeatherStim site. We'll kind of get a number from them. And a 27 at Keystone Airport. That's not overwhelming, but it's noteworthy. Don't really want to be adding about in this type of adverse condition. These adverse conditions. Okay, only 11 there, 10 miles an hour, give or take, at the sheriff's office. That's not too bad then, you know, as we're looking at that number. But again, just continuing to give you guys the latest weather on State Road 100. This is some pretty nasty weather. I know sometimes these radar images, you know, depending on where you are, can make a big difference. I remember one time raining here, one radar showed the storms, the other didn't even show the rain. Didn't even really know it was coming because the angle, you know, wasn't picking up on it. So just never know. What was weird about that is, you know, that story it was actually the Moody radar that was picking up on it, not the Jacksonville. So, but generally the Jacksonville radar here is quite a bit better here for dark, you know, in terms of actually figuring out what's going on. So, you know, it's not our area by any stretch, but we just saw a tornado warning pop up in the country. Let me go ahead and pull that up here on this Wednesday afternoon. As you look toward Michigan, very, very far up north of Michigan. This is Huron County off the Detroit radar. I mean, goodness, that doesn't even look all that intense, but this happened to look really high up in the ward of storm there. Doesn't mean there's not something there, and there very well could be. It's just wanted to hit some type of spotter or help them out with that, but don't see tornado warnings popping up in Michigan all that often. But this is there for Huron County, just popping up there. Possible tornado around the areas there 7 miles southwest of Harbor Beach. Detroit, Pontiac, Michigan there. Weather Service is issuing that. But I wonder if there's another radar in that area that's picking that up better, because that sure doesn't look like a lot. Maybe right there at the coast. But, you know, you always gotta treat those tornado warnings seriously. We have a bunch of flash flood warnings like Virginia, West Virginia. You know, that's a vulnerable area for flash flooding. So let me switch to reflectivity. Some of those don't have the rainfall in them currently, but after everything that happened in Texas, there and other parts of the country here, 2 other spots, gotta be careful here with these flash flood warnings. You know, this is top of mind right now for sure. Always gotta be careful with them, but really top of mind right now. Franklin, Henry, city of Martinsville in Virginia. We have some pretty nasty wind coming on in according to the warning. They're saying, you know, 60-mile-an-hour winds, but even worse is a golf ball size hail potential. That's a storyline up there. Let's take it back to the local radar review right now. It has to be off of Moody. We're just going to go ahead and continue to give you guys the latest. Continue to give you guys the latest here on the situation. You can see around Stark here. Seeing some of that wind according to velocity mode. I don't know if, you know, some of that here, based on what I'm seeing, may not be reaching, which is really good news. We're up to a third of an inch of rain, but there's still a lot of lightning around overall. Lake City becoming more predominant there, and, you know, west of McClinney, you know, seeing some coalescing of the activity up in that area. So, got to be really mindful of that here, obviously. You know, Archer area, there's some lightning around there between Archer and Micanopy. Let's go to Tampa later, see if there's some wind enhancement with that. It may not be obvious, but can't really tell. As you look there on Marineland, west of Marineland, Summer Haven, you see some lightning there northwest of St. Augustine. Just whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors, obviously. I know there's no significant advisories right now, which, you know, just good news, obviously. I feel like we might have had some winds in there getting a little bit stronger, but it does look like there's some weakening going on now in Bradford County. which would be good news. Tampa radar, I mean, we're way too far away to get a good look on that, but you can see some of that from there. I know there's some strong stuff there, and Central Florida, no warning there, but yeah, you can't really tell for that radar either. Let me check Tallahassee's. I mean, it's hard to tell. It's hard to know without being able to see the microscale details. Hopefully things weren't as bad as I was thinking toward Bradford. Granted, it seems like they were pretty bad in Duval to have that many folks in the dark. As we were looking here, about 7,000 customers in the dark. That's indicative of there's probably some damage in wind somewhere in town there, I would think. Unless the lightning did all that. But again, I'm just continuing to give you guys the very latest here. Okay, see Flagler County now. We have over 2,600 customers in the dark there. Again, it may not be all about Bradford even. It maybe it's a situation too where, you know, all these storms here are points for a scan or two. If we had the other view, you'd be able to tell that they pulse up and then pulse back down. It's just hard to know what's happening. We're kind of, you know, limited here because of that issue with the radar in Jacksonville. But Duval County, almost 7,000 customers in the dark. Alachua County, 1,700. Bradford's at 80 customers, so that's not too bad. I mean, for summertime, 80, you know, and even 1,700, that's not, you know, that alarming. You know, especially Alachua, I mean, you know, not big of a deal overall. But when you get up to 7,000, that tells me something, you know, somewhere got, you know, damage there toward Jacksonville, I would think. I'll probably see some of that reporting coming on in. Let me check another source of mine here as we continue the coverage this afternoon. As we continue the coverage, let me just check some information here. Bear with me. And a flood advisory canceled for Duval, you know, one of the areas there. Let me see if they kept some other areas under flood advisories. Looks like there's still one out toward Lafayette County. Weather station measured 2.4 inches of rain in Duval County in an hour around the community of White House there in Duval County. 3.21 inches in an hour around San Marco. Just a little bit earlier on before we jumped in, but Baker County had 2.13 inches of rain from 2 to 3 o'clock this afternoon. Okay, so just continuing to look through things. There's a little bit of hail in Coffee County, Georgia earlier this afternoon. And a Jacksonville office just sent out a tweet saying stronger thunderstorms will mainly be confined to northeast Florida this evening, mainly west of 301, with some stronger wind gusts of 40 to 50 and localized heavy rainfall and excessive lightning. The Duval rest may be dropping some, but gotta watch like Putnam County, maybe Marion, according to the Weather Service here. That vicinity, give or take, Flagler still maybe with some of that concern as well. So that vicinity, you know, some of the surrounding counties could have some of that concern. And the Weather Service in Jacksonville, have to watch this in the days ahead, Tallahassee, Tampa, and the like. But the Weather Prediction Center saying now we could have a risk of heavy rain in our general vicinity from the 13th to the 15th. That could really become a little bit more pronounced here. We have an area of moisture that'll be trying to coalesce, you know, as we're looking there. You know, we'll see. Hopefully we don't get anything tropical. There's some talk of some of that accident eventually in the period here. But, you know, that could be pretty far out. Hurricane Center doesn't have any threat within a 7-day period for that. Now, I'll see you real quick the 7-day that I had last night. Of course, you know, we're kind of getting past Wednesday here at some points really when you think about it. But let me go ahead and jump this on the screen. So I had 70% today, and I think that's coming true. A lot of folks, especially the east, not as much Tallahassee area, but to the east, really get into the storminess, whether it's severe or not. Tomorrow, 60%, and it drops down some for Friday, Saturday, but then that heavy rain period I was just alluding to, tomorrow's the 10th, Friday's the 11th, Saturday is the 12th. So from the 13th to the 15th there, that's when we could really have more heavy rain, and we'll have to watch out for the flash freeze potential. So that becomes, more maximized there. I know it's a situation too when we do these 7 days. You got to think about how we do them here in the meteorology community. Some folks are doing different, but some of this is confidence, thinking here as well. So, like today, because it's shorter term, it's nearer in the models. We can just tell whether it's a bigger scale system or not. And even on the micro scale level, that's where we're gonna have the storm development, and it's gonna kind of grow into something big. But then it's pretty unusual for this time of year for me to have 70% out on day 6 of this. So that kind of tells you that I'm thinking I'm probably going to have more of a larger scale system here come in with the rainfall. That's pretty high for day 6 on a 7-day, any time of year, later, like, if you're talking about the fall, the spring, that'd be even more dramatic. I mean, like a squall line or hurricane. Didn't mean that here, but it means, more of an organized system coming in with some more moisture. So we're going to have to watch out for that Sunday through Tuesday, give or take time frame. And it's going to be hot in between them. I mean, right now we really cooled off for Easter start down to 71. That's below our low here. That's what happens in the summertime. You go from really warm to not so warm when you have these storms, and that's the benefit of them. But, there's also risks from them. I mean, we do need the rain. Don't want too much too quick here. We didn't get that, it doesn't seem. About 30 minutes, that's a healthy amount of rain, quite honestly. Just don't want that lightning around. As I'm looking at some more of my data, but it's great to see the temperature drop, the heat index really drop to 73 now. It's muggy, but not near as warm as it was, which is a positive, obviously. So, as we go ahead and just continue to watch things here in the Weather Center. So, probably wrap it up pretty soon since we're not seeing anything here, too, overwhelming here at this point. Now, speaking of overwhelming, though, that was what happened in the vortex this back, that early Friday morning with the Guadalupe River. Highlights the need for folks to have those no other radios on hand, and, having multiple ways to get alerts is tragic with so many fatalities. The number keeps changing. Haven't had a chance to update that here on another graphic I had in here last night, but it's just, absolutely catastrophic in terms of, the number is staggering. So many fatalities, so many people missing. The river rose there, and this number had to adjust because the gauge, there were some issues. Now, the thought was that it rose at Hunt, Texas, 25 feet or so in 2 hours, which, Helene, you're evacuated from locally here. Dahlia, you kind of get the idea. Evacuations happen because we saw the threat forthcoming. You can kind of forecast that. I mean, these, numbers here, it could have been worse, actually, than what it was. We had time to evacuate it. It was something that you knew about days ahead of time, that threat coming in. Here, it developed in the middle of the night, the threat. There was a flood watch the day before with the San Antonio, office there, Austin, San Antonio. They did a great job here trying to, give folks a heads up with the flood watch that afternoon before. But, in the middle of the night, when the actual warnings come out, if, if you're not getting good cell service, you might not get that alert because they were out in time for folks to have evacuated to higher ground if the warning was able to be received. And, but I have a feeling a lot of folks sleeping, maybe their phones on do not disturb and or just not getting the signal. And if you don't get a signal in the middle of the night, it's already raining, it's heavy, so it might be harder to hear the phone in some instances, not all, but some. Weather radio, they're a lot more noisy, and they might have been able to wake people up. There's all sorts of different methods, but weather radios, that area looked like one that was a little bit more favored to be able to get a signal from the site in Kerrville, Texas. But even for our local viewers, we encourage you guys to have a weather radio on hand. And Midland is the brand I use, at least, used for about the last 20 years. I mean, a few different ones and that want to wear out, but it's that I don't, I wish I had a picture in here. I might need to put one in the show or be in front of the wall at some point, show you. But it's a model there where, it says same digital weather capabilities, meaning you can put like county by county, numbers in there. So if you just want one county's warnings and watches, then that's all you would get if you just put that code in there and have the right transmitter on there, like 4 for Gainesville area, 7 for Jacksonville, and that specific model. But that model is kind of white, but with black part there with the buttons and around the small screen. That's the model I use. There's some other Midland ones. I don't know about those, specifically, but that one's been, really helpful. I've used it, 2/3 of my life, that kind. So those are very helpful, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. And the price can range some depending on where you get them. I know they used to be, haven't had to buy a new one recently, but, it used to be around $30 like at Walmart. But now, they might be a little bit higher than that at this point in time. But these weather radios, $30, $40, $50, somewhere in that range, but they're very, very important. These no weather radios, they can save lives. But again, right now, this accident here, we still have to be careful, don't get me wrong. There could be some power outages, some damage. Looks like we just got an advisory for the Hilliard area. Okay, let's look at this then. This is more northeast Florida than north central, but this point in time, because here on Hilliard, we have the potential for 40-mile-an-hour winds, excessive cloudy ground, light, and a minor flooding due to heavy rainfall around Hilliard, around, let's see here, mainly just Hilliard in this, but, that's US 1, so just got to be mindful of that. Very, very mindful, obviously, in Nassau County, as we're looking at that scenario there. So again, I'm just continuing to give you guys the very latest on all of that, on all that situation, in terms of the perspective here. Let's go out towards southwest of Live Oak. You see maybe a little bit of small hail. It's not advisory labeled at this point, but could have a little small hail there southeast of New Bern. So we'll have to watch that. We're going to go and wrap it for now. If we need to pop back in, we will. If something really ramps up, we'll be on. If it's, not as big of a deal, but there's a warning, we'll go ahead and post that on Facebook there, Casey Cloud Reacts, Facebook Cloud Weather, Twitter /Exit Cloud Casey. So that's going to wrap it up for the time being here. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud in the Ward Weather Center. Let me just see if there's any questions or comments before I wrap it on up here. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here in toward the Weather Center. Let me real quick, I'll switch to a camera view. Well, it's looking a little bit better right now here, but I think that overdoes the exposure some when we've had the rain. But we have a question from John B. Is it safe to drive northbound on 301 from North Marion County right now? Let's see here. So let's get down to 301. So for a ways it is, as we're going up toward Lockaloosa, Hawthorne, and, in general at this point, just the exercise caution, I would say, watch out. It could be, wrecks. I mean, depending on how far north you're going, of course, because eventually you can get into Nassau and it starts to get worse here. But I think this light rain is pretty light. Just got to watch out for 6 spots. It is close to rush hour, but we'll have to see if this kind of comes into the view. We had this stuff coming from the west earlier, and it kind of weakened a little bit more. This doesn't look like it's headed, really quickly down to the south, but it's a pretty stormy, lingering pattern. So just be careful. I would say it's okay right now, but exercise caution. And if you don't feel comfortable, just pull off, at a business or something there and go inside for a little bit to wait it on out. I wouldn't pull off on the side of the road if I could help it, because it might be hard for somebody to see you on the side of the road. I know, your flashers on, it might be able to be seeing your vehicle, but maybe it's better if you could to get into a business there for a little bit if you didn't feel comfortable. But right now it looked okay from Northern Marion up definitely into Alachua one, and it started to get a little bit less favorable in Bradford, but it's looking better than it was, just when we were talking just a little while ago. But eventually, if you're going all the way to like Nassau County, then you start maybe having some problems there. If some of this kind of comes on down, this stuff can change pretty rapidly. But think Bradford's area is more stabilized now. It'd be harder to get more development for a while. We're down to 71 degrees, so that's helpful in terms of limiting that favorability for the storm acts. And St. Augustine area, that looks like that may be close to needing an advisor on Crescent Beach, just to the west there, as you're getting off I-95. So wanted to watch that, obviously, but I'm going to wrap it for now. Keep it tuned to cloud weather. We'll keep you guys advised here and be back if and as needed. Of course, our next one will update late tomorrow, but stay tuned for the updates here. Stay safe.